Welcome back to the 49 Willys pickup project. In this episode, we're going to focus on windows. So I want to get the windshield in and get that back window in. I don't think this is necessarily a how-to video because we've never done this before. So we'll do the best we can and we'll see how much of this I can actually capture. Here's a few of the other odds and ends I've been working on, and hopefully we'll continue on this today if possible. I want to get this door put back together, and Guy's been working on, he worked on the other one and he got it all figured out, so just repeat that process. In the meantime, in preparation for that, I installed the weather stripping around the door. That actually went pretty well. It's kind of a messy job with the glue that's used, the adhesive. It's a 3M product, but it grabs really well and it works pretty good. This is the driver's door. That's all finished with the exception of the door handle. My daughter has that. She's recovering those, so we'll have that soon. But this door is actually ready to mount the way it stands. Let me show you one other thing I'm working on right now. We put the radiator in, and I noticed that my radiator, of course, has a expansion port here so that when this expands, it has a place to go. Now, my old International truck, it's just got a tube that kind of drops down here and just leaks onto the ground. On more modern vehicles, they put a recovery tank on. So I think that's what I want to do here. So I've got a tank. This actually is a tank for a Mini Cooper, I think 2002 to 2006, something like that. But it's about the right size. It's got a little inlet down at the very bottom. And all you need to do is make some sort of a bracket to mount it right about here, and then I can route that hose. So let me show you how I want this to mount. This would be that sidewall on the grill. I want to mount it up tight against that. And as you notice here, this mounting tab is quite a ways away from there, and then I've got a couple of little pins down here where it needs to drop in. So here's what I came up with. I made up this bracket. I just made a cardboard template and then got some metal and made a bracket out of that. I put a standoff on here. I just took a piece of steel tubing, welded a nut to the end, and welded it to this bracket. So now this sits like this. Let's get this angled the right way. This drops in here. There we go. Bolts up there, and that hangs right off of the grill on the side. All right, that should do the job. It's mounted on there nice and sturdy. Whether it's going to actually have any overflow, I really don't know, but this will kind of keep the mess down. I know the fender will fit in here. I've got just enough room for it to slide past here, so I think we're in good shape. There's a couple other things I've been working on. This right here is the receiver for my GPS speedometer, and what I'm going to do with it for now is just mount it on the dash. And I've got a molding that goes around the windshield that'll be up this high, but there's room right here. And I'm bringing it right through this hole that normally would have been where the switch for the wipers go. I don't really know what I'm doing with wipers yet, so for now what I did is just put a grommet on here. This wire will come through here, and I'll just use some adhesive and mount this right here for now. One of the other things I did is cleaned up, I think I might have mentioned this, I don't know, we'll see. I cleaned up this heater box and I got that working, so that's in place. Haven't hooked it up yet. I've got my two inlet outlets down in here, but I'm just going to leave those for now. I don't really want to mess with that yet. The other thing we did last time is we got our vent up here working. So there's just a little handle underneath here that operates this. Let me just open it. There we go. So that's how we get some fresh, cool air into the cab and keep us comfortable in there without AC. And then just pull that handle back to lock it down. What I'd like to do is address, you see that? That big gaping hole in the firewall right there. That hole is for the wiper. Now this truck would have come with a vacuum operated wiper, and this truck didn't have one. It just had a big hole. Actually, it had been kind of cut out. Somebody must have had something else in there. But so what I'm going to do is grab the vacuum operated wiper out of my parts truck and clean it up and see if I can make it work. These are the parts I pulled out of my parts truck. It's got the wiper motor. I may experiment with that. I mean, these are vacuum wipers, but if it works, right? I've got the motor right here, and I took some time and cleaned this up. I actually took it apart. I'm not going to do that here again, but it's held together with these kind of funny looking fasteners, and those do unscrew. I just took a really small flat nose pliers, and I was able to twist those out, really no trouble, and pop this off. And the inside was kind of gummy, so I cleaned it out as best I could. And I've seen some videos on online where what you'll do is you'll put a hose on here, dump some Marvel mystery oil in there, and work it back and forth, using the mechanism here, and get it lubricated again. I used brake fluid on mine, but I've got that working. It seems to be moving pretty freely now. The other thing I grabbed was the control knob, and this is just a cable operated deal that as you turn that knob, it just adjusts this cable, which in turn is hooked up here, which turns that pump on and off. Pretty simple operation. Now it's time to test the pump. So I've already done that. My first attempt, and I'll show you here in a minute, but my first attempt was to find a vacuum port. And on my carb, I do have a plug. Hang on, get some focus on that. I've got a plug right here. So I pulled that plug out and put a fitting on there and ran a vacuum hose. And I was able to confirm that the pump does work. It actually seems like it's doing what it's supposed to do. The only problem, though, is that the only time it would run is if I gave it lots of throttle. So I don't think vacuum off the carburetor is the way to go. I think I need vacuum off of the manifold. And so for my next attempt here, let me show you this. This is my intake manifold. I think it's kind of built into the into the head on this unit. But I have two plugs, one on this side, one on this side. So I took this plug out, and again, I put a fitting on there for a vacuum hose. So I'm going to put a hose on there, and let's see how this thing works. All right, let's hook this thing up. There we go. Now watch right here. This is the switch that starts and stops it. Turn it on. Looking good. Turn it off. It stops. And it self-parks. The self-parking is working. So it looks pretty good. Now, I'm wondering if it's got, you know, the power that it needs. If I try to slow it down, I can feel there's a lot of torque there. So I think this is going to run the wipers. The other thing I wanted to do is rev it up and see if this stops or slows down. Slows a little bit, and that's pretty normal with a vacuum wiper setup. So as far as I'm concerned, this pump passes the first test. Next, let's take a look at mounting the pump. So normally this pump would have had, you can see it up here, a captive nut right on the firewall. It would have one here and somewhere down here. And you notice it's missing. Well, that's because someone had taken this out, had, you know, cut a bigger hole in the dash here, or really just sort of cut it and then just bent that in. Other than a spot where I can only guess maybe there was a wiper motor or something retrofitted on this at one time, and they pretty crudely just hacked it open. So we'll flatten that out and close that hole up again. And as part of this, I do have to figure out what I'm going to do for wipers. And so the piece that would have been right here is missing completely. And you can kind of see where I had to weld this. I had to weld a patch back in there. So I need to get another threaded, a threaded spot right here. What I'm going to do is use a nutsert. I've got a tool for putting those in, and it'll do the job nicely. I have all the cabling. Now what happens is this thing is cabled through some pulleys up to the posts that rotate. So I want to show you how this goes. We start way down at the end there. You can see where the motor sticks through, and that's just an oscillating arm. And then it brings these little thin cables up through a pulley with a tensioner. And then it finally, see if we can get a picture of that, comes up to this last set of pulleys. So let me start this thing up and we'll turn it on and you can see how they operate. Okay, here we go. Let's turn it on. Okay, you can see that arm going back and forth coming through these pulleys here. And finally up to the post. All right, both of these are turning exactly like they're supposed to. You can see them on the outside here. Now I guess we need to put arms and wiper blades on. Let's take a quick look at our wiper arms. So I had a whole bunch of wiper arms, only one of which I think is usable, and that would be this one. It's for the driver's side. This one looks identical to what I can order through the Jeepster man, who I've sourced most of the parts I've needed through. So I'm going to order a passenger side that should match this. And then I ordered up two sets of wiper blades. Those go on just like that. But I don't have any good blades, but at least I know the style that I'm looking for. So anyway, I'll wait for these to come in, and once I have the windshield on, these can actually be installed. We got our cab glass in. I had a lot of help from Guy, and I needed it. This was definitely a two-man job. Now, Trevor over at Tumbleweed Garage told me that the rear window went in easy and the front window was a lot more work. I had just the opposite experience. So let me explain what's going on with this. The gasket for the rear window is one long length of rubber, and then it's got a seam. We put the seam right here. It's got a little seam, and that was part of the problem. This goes in from the inside. So we first started by putting the glass into the rubber gasket, and then we brought it around and we put the rope all the way inside that, the next slot that goes into this flange. And we had a heck of a time just keeping the glass in that rubber while we were moving it around. We ended up using some duct tape on the inside of the glass against that rubber. That pretty much did the job. And then our rope, we had the rope span that little gap in the gasket. So that's how we got this thing together, got it in, and then we used the rope trick. And we were able to get it around the bottom and both sides without too much trouble. But the top part, it was really tight. I don't know if the piece of rope I had was just a little too big, but we were really struggling to pull this out. And if you look up here real close, you can see a couple of actual cuts there in the gasket for where the rope slipped and started cutting into the gasket. I'll be able to fix that with some of that same adhesive I used on the door trim. It's kind of a rubber cement. But we really struggled to get this in. It took us quite a while and a lot of sweat, but we got it in. By contrast, this windshield went in super easy. There is a video, I'm going to put a link down to the comments that we use as a reference. There's not many good videos out there really on how to install this windshield, but the one that we found, we were able to follow kind of what that guy did, and actually turned out pretty well. So let me explain what we did. If you look at the windshield, it's not perfectly flat. It kind of kicks out and it kicks back. So it's pushed out a little bit there. So we started by making sure the steering wheel was off, and then I pulled off the wiper switch, and I pulled off this little GPS receiver for my speedometer. We kind of dropped those out of the way. And then what we did is we put this gasket, put the glass into the gasket. Now this is one continuous loop. So it was actually pretty easy to get the glass into it and get it to stay in there. Then we walked it inside. Again, we put the rope around that flange. It's kind of just up underneath this lip. We put the rope in there. And then we kind of had it bent backwards instead of forwards right here so that we could get each of these sides in. So we got those all the way in, worked them a little bit around the corners, and I was holding pressure against this window right about here. And as Guy was fitting those corners and the sides in, I could feel the window actually kind of pulling itself forward. Got to about that point, and I just gave it a little push, and it just popped right into place. There was really not a lot of resistance. So that worked really well for us. Then we just pulled the rope out here, pulled the rope around the top, and again, that went really easy. I was kind of surprised. I expected a little bit more of a fight, but it went real easy. So this whole windshield probably took us less than an hour, start to finish, to get that in. And you can see we've got our trim in now, got the mirror on, and everything is put together for that. So glad that the glass is done, that we didn't break anything. And now we can move on and take a look at those doors. So we finished out the day by finishing up this door. So we had to put the door glass in. I had that one done earlier, but we had to get the glass into this one and get the wing window and all that set up. So we got that done. That took a long time too. We kind of struggled with that. We had a problem where the little gear on the window crank was interfering with this window channel that goes all the way down in there. I ended up shimming it down below so that it wouldn't interfere, but it's all working. It's a nice smooth operation, so we've got that back together. So I think on the next round, really what we've got left to do is to get these doors on, and I think we'll put the fenders on because I'm done with the work that I had kind of set aside the fenders till I was finished, but with that windshield in now, we can do the fenders. And then there's a few other odds and ends. We'll talk about it next time, but we are getting dangerously close to having this thing ready for the road. I'd like to thank you for joining me. If you'd like to see how we got to this point, you can scroll down into the comments, and there's a link to a playlist for all of the videos on this project going back to the day I first brought it home. If you'd like to see progress going forward, you might want to hit that subscribe button, and hopefully my videos will pop up as I release them. Again, thanks for joining me, and I hope to see you next time.